Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Fallout Bar here at Online Darts, bringing you instant reaction from every single session of the Betfred World Match Play from Blackpool. My name is Jack Gardner. I'm joined by the wonderful Mr. Dan Simpson once again this evening. How are we doing, pal?
Very, very well. Thank you very much. What an interesting evening that was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's 20 to midnight as we start this show. Obviously, this is part of the concept of a reaction show. I completely get it. But when we get a result like we did in the very first game tonight, I thought we might start this one a little bit early.
Yeah, I thought I thought I would be tucked well up into my bed by now.
Wishful thinking on our part. Good evening to everybody in the chat room that are joining us live here on YouTube. Juanita says good evening. She won't be online this morning to watch, but it was an awesome night. Hopefully you're listening or watching back, so big shout out to you, Juanita. James says Wright is looking more and more finished, down to 14th on the tour card list if Cullen wins tomorrow. Big fall for Peter Wright. We'll talk about him shortly. Tommy says good evening. Els says that last game was seriously squeaky bum time to keep the Derby v Humphreys final prediction alive. Jesus something. But again, boys, one step closer. Watch this space. We are watching this space, mate. Although this is the last Fallout Bar this week with either myself or Dan, so we're going to have to pass that on to the rest of the team that are picking up the slack. Zane says, I called it Humphreys 14-12. What a game it was. Breathtaking night. Good evening, Bob, who says good evening to me and Dan. And Al says, I love darts, me. Well, giddy. Wow. Well, giddy is probably the way to start. Although the night started with a little bit of a damp squid because it was one-way traffic in the very first match between Damon Hedger and Brendan Dolan.
Yeah, Damon played very well. He did play very well. And the statistics by the end of that match were genuinely surprising to me because I sat and watched the game, but I didn't watch it in a way that I was really tracking and analysing the stats as I went through. I was gobsmacked, to be honest, when I saw that it was a shade under 60% on the doubles, averaging just under 96. So, like, all in all, a really good performance from Damon Hedger, but he was sort of kicking into an open goal to a degree because Brendan Dolan, 6% on his doubles, just couldn't get a dart into a double. And whilst it was very nice to see him play well, another occasion where he's played well on television, moved through into the next round of a big major event, it wasn't the exciting back and forth, high scoring game that I had hoped for.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, look, it was sort of a thing a few years ago with Phil Taylor that if you did knock Phil Taylor out, the curse often struck in the following round that you wouldn't do an awful lot with that performance because it took so much to dethrone Phil Taylor. Van Gerwen adopted that air or sense of aurora around him, I guess, for a few years. And this feels like one of them occasions from Brendan Dolan. He did all the hard work in beating Michael Van Gerwen in that opening round, and it just has not happened.
I think that the phrase I used yesterday when we were talking predictions was that I thought he peaked, with that victory, and I was fairly confident that he wouldn't be able to sustain that level. And I'm disappointed to have been right on that one, and he did just because it wasn't a slight drop off. It was a big difference in performances from Brendan Dolan, a really big difference. But all credit to Damon Hedger, and he still had to go out and win those legs, and he did it in very good fashion. And certainly the way that he was finishing and checking things out, I think will bring an awful lot of confidence for him going into the next round.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, 57% on the outer ring, 95 average, but I suppose over 12 legs, that's reasonable and solid enough from the heat. We've got to talk about his walk-on because that seems to be a topic of discussion every single time we discuss Damon Hedger these days. I opted for very, very similar to round one, went with the cricket ball instead of the cricket bat. I mean, I'm still not sure it's the smartest play in the world to wind up the Winter Gardens crowd, but it's worked back-to-back at times for him.
It has. I'm just not sure what he does next. Because obviously the longer he stays in this top, I feel he's sort of committed now to doing something to walk on. He's done batting, he's bowling. I'm not quite sure how he can make a feature out of wicket keeping. So I don't know what he's going to come out with.
Fall on his backside like Johnny Bairstow did earlier.
Yeah, wrong foot himself and fluke a catch probably that everyone else says great. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But I do think he's almost made a run for his own back in that he's committed, and the longer and deeper he goes in this tournament, the more he's going to have to get his thinking cap on as to what he can do to entertain the crowd.
Indeed. Are we a little bit concerned for Damo now? Because he is such a genuinely nice bloke. We've had him on the live lounge before. We get on really well with him as an organisation as well. He's always been brilliant with his time. He gives really good interviews, sort of thing. But if you're going to continue to go down this route, which look, I think a lot of the crowd are seeing it as banter, there is that element of you might end up in the Gerwin Price situation, and you kicked off once, you wound up a crowd once, and then there's that air of pantomime for a while. But actually, there's going to be a time when Damon Heta does not want or need the crowd on his back, and it's just going to be there waiting for him.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line to tread, and so far, I think he's trod that line all right, in that it hasn't got on, it hasn't got on top of him. It hasn't. No, he hasn't created those situations. It will be intriguing to see how this goes on. Whether on just because I think you make a really fair point, and he's such a decent fella that you sort of don't want the crowd to turn on him. But I also think that it's a bit of a unique one, this particular one at the Matchplay, because the Ashes is going on and Australian is clearly picked a theme. Now, the stuff he's done on the Euro tours when he's done his entrance didn't really, there wasn't a turn off to the crowd. It wasn't. There were.
No, it was local, interesting music, wasn't it? Big pop hits or whatever.
Yeah, and I think
locally with a plastic lawnmower at one point or whatever else he's done. But yeah,
I think post Ashes, if he carries on on a theme that isn't divisive, then he's probably going to be safe.
Yeah, fingers crossed for Damo, who did wrap up an 11-1 victory over Brendan Dolan. Let's hear it from the Aussie ace right now.
Yeah, I've just I don't see it as a big this opportunity just being in the tournament, to be fair. But when you look at it, like I said, the top 32 in the world are in this tournament. You got to expect that these players aren't always going to win, are they? These other players are creeping up, and the top 30 you can't rely on anything. So for them to get beat, it's not a massive thing, you could say. Like, of course, they can average 110 just like that, and whip in 180s, 170s, and whatever. But they're vulnerable. They're beaten on a weekly basis on Pro Tours, Euro Tours, and they're not always winning everything. So I think you just got to expect that and respect the players coming behind them, because they're hungry, they're eager. You know what I mean? There's people chasing them as well. So no, it's all fair play to everyone that's been winning so far, and I just hope for a really good tournament and for myself to be at the end. That's all I can hope for.
Pretty laid back from Damon. One more quick thing. Did you notice his little bit of an interaction with Wayne Mardle on social media? Before tonight's play started, there was 12 players remaining in the tournament. Wayne listed that 11 of them had been in major finals, hinting that Damon Heta's World Cup of Darts success did not count towards being in a major final, which part of me is inclined to agree. But given that Barney, for the last couple of years, was invited to the Premier League on the basis that he won the Pairs World Championship, as he used to refer to it, instead of the World Cup of Darts, for the Netherlands with Michael van Gerwen, I'm not sure that logic applies when you consider how highly Sky and Wayne Mardle ranks the Premier League.
No, so I can't decide if that was Wayne genuinely just not thinking like the World Cup is a major event. It's a televised final. It depends. It all depends on you. And God, we could bore everybody for 3 hours with a debate on what isn't.
I'm not getting into what is a major at all. But I just thought that was
if you retitled it as televised final, then you'd have to let him through, wouldn't you? You'd let him have it.
Yeah. And the man's won on the World Series as well, by the way. So That's two different arenas. Let's not completely rule that out as well. That was enough to get Dimitri into the Premier League last year. A number of World Series successes. So yeah, I think we'll rephrase that tweet. Get on Twitter, Blue Wayne, and give that a cheeky little edit. Let's dive into the chat room a little bit. A proper textbook bounce by Dolan after beating MVG. Yeah, it certainly looked that way. Zane says, how many times do you see an underdog take out a big name player and then lose in the next round? Again, quite incredibly common. It's always happened. Maliki says that Heta is winning the tournament. Tommy says you have to say Dolan is just a spoiler. I think at this point of the career, I 100% have to agree with that. This conversation about who do we think will win the tournament. We will give our predictions who we think from the remaining 8 will win the tournament at the end of this show, because this is the last time as I said, this is the last time you'll hear from myself or Dan. So if it's changed at any point for you, Dan, now is your one chance to bail out. We'll give you the midweek option. On to the second match of the night, and what a response this was after a disappointing performance, not quite result, in the first round from Johnny Clayton. The Ferret bouncing back to absolutely dispatch of Dimitri van den Berg in superb fashion. 11-6 down.
Yeah, and I think we in the first round when we talked about it, it was about getting that win on the match play stage, and it was about still being in the tournament. And tonight we saw a much more classic version of what we come to expect from Johnny Clayton. In 140s, the 140s were finding their range, the thing that is such a key part of his game when those 140s are going in. 18 of them we saw tonight. It was just shy of 60%, 11 out of 19 on the doubles, 102 average, and of course he reeled in the big fish. So it's just, I would say, an all-round proper Clayton performance. Dimitri, I put my hands up and picked Dimitri to win relatively comfortably when we spoke last night. I just think it's a stage he's comfortable on, and we know he does well. His doubles let him down a little bit. The 1-2-5 checkout was gorgeous, but across the game, his doubles let him down a bit. His score wasn't what it has been, but he didn't play particularly badly, Dimitri. He was just beaten by a really, really top-end performance from Johnny Clayton. And then looking at who's left, that's dangerous. That if he's found a bit of something and worked his way through, like if he's got his rough performance out of the way and got it out of the first round and stayed in, he's one of the few, top 10 players that have had a really rough performance and come through it. So if he's got that out of the way and now he's going to play proper Johnny Clayton darts, then he's in with a proper chance.
Yeah, hindsight is always a wonderful thing. Johnny Clayton was one of the players that actually on our preview show, a lot of us did fancy to have a bit of a run. He was the talk of the week before we had you on the preview show, Dan, where we're saying if you look at that section of the draw, Peter Wright's completely out of form. Dimitri van den Berg hadn't gone on the runs that he went on the Pro Tour or the World Series at that point. It was crying out for a Johnny Clayton run to at least the semi-final. Obviously, didn't play that great in the first round. Said in his post-match press interview on stage that he had some personal issues at home. We still believe they're going on. I think he's going to reference that in the clip we're going to play you. But if he's found a way to just get through that and do a job up on that stage, he's really a threat for this title, isn't he?
Oh, 100%, without a doubt. And
You've managed to mute yourself.
I don't know why that happened. It happened the other night, didn't it?
Happened the other night. Did you just not want to talk to me, mate? It's fine if you don't.
I haven't touched the thing. It's like I'm saying some sort of buzzword in my computer's had enough of it. I'm actually like, shut up, Dan. It's really interesting because he's probably gone from probably, I would say, the least sort of most under par performance against what we expected from him in the first round of the players that came through, to, after one more game, arguably, I mean, I haven't looked, but my assumption is he's the favourite now.
I haven't checked just yet. In fact, I am going to check. Luke Humphries started the evening as favourite, came through an incredibly tough battle there. Obviously, that changed a little bit. That didn't change when Peter Wright exited the tournament either, despite Peter Wright being higher ranked than him.
Let's have a quick look. See what
Luke Humphries still remains the outright favourite for the tournament, 11-4. Johnny Clayton 5-1. Nathan Aspinall 11-2. Joe Cullen 13-2. Damon Hetcher is available at 8-1. Ryan Searle 9-1, along with Chris Dobie and Daryl Gurney at 12-1.
Fair enough.
Let's then hear from the ferret, Johnny Clayton, and see what he had to say in his post-match press conference.
Yeah, it's difficult, pal. I got problems at home. It's hard. It's very difficult. But I'm here to do a job, and I'm trying my best to do it. So today was a good day. Yeah, it means everything, pal. You know, like I say, I got some problems at home with family. So this would mean everything.
It seems to be, and it's to be hoped that he is able to take some inspiration or motivation, let's say, from whatever's going on, and that in the wrong hands. And it's someone that can play darts like Johnny Clayton could be a really dangerous thing for everybody else. Because if you've managed to get somebody who can play darts the way that Johnny Clayton can, and find a way to motivate them to another level, then he's a real threat.
Yeah, they could indeed. On to match number 3 then, between Peter Wright and Ryan Searle. And this one went the way of Ryan Searle. Absolutely relentless once again, Dan. That change of dart seems to be working for him, because he's finding the range in those scoring visits once again.
Yeah, it wasn't quite. Again, you know, it wasn't quite the level that we saw from him the other day. But I'm not sure that would be possible, because the other day he was unplayable. He was absolutely unbelievable. But he consistently throughout the match did enough. You know, I think the break in the first mini session was a big help, and a break in which Peter Wright threw a max as well, and it didn't look like he was going to find the break, but Ryan came through it, and then was just managed to do a really good job of front running for the rest of it. And you know, throughout that whole game, Peter Wright found one breaker throw, and it just wasn't really. He never looked under threat, as close as the game was at points. Again, Peter didn't have a particular stinker, but Ryan just got in the lead, and then didn't expose himself enough. Neither of them were great on the doubles. There was a lot of missed doubles tonight, but they sort of matched each other in that, and a lot of that happened in the same leg. You know, there was a few legs in there with quite a lot of darts in them, because both players had a little go at it. So they matched each other really for most of the game. They matched each other fairly level, but Ryan was just lucky enough to A, have won the ball, B, have found that early break, and was just able to sustain it. And yeah, he didn't offer Peter too many chances, and when the chances were there, Peter couldn't take them. Yeah,
100%. We saw him tinker about with darts once again. I was convinced we were just going to see the straight gold darts. Obviously, started with the ones that look very similar to a dart that Simon Whitlock used to throw.
Yeah, it was a Whitlocky type of dart, wasn't it, early doors?
Swapped straight back to the gold darts afterwards. Like I said, it was just a case of chasing that break back. There was a point where he looked like he was going to mount that comeback, wasn't there? But again, Ryan Searle just kept him at arm's length, and that's where he stayed for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and again, we'll come to games where we saw, well, certainly in the last game we saw it swing, and we sort of re-picked the winner 5, 6, 7, 8 times. But at no point in this game did I really think that Peter had enough to really make a game of it and put Ryan under pressure. he did a really good job of front running, and I think it's probably really good for Ryan because he's now won in a different way this week in this tournament. You know, the first week, the first game in the opening round, it was complete domination and real high level darts. That's what got him the win. He just played too good. Tonight was a bit different, and he had to work for his win, and he had to play a match, and he had to do the right things at the right time. And that's exactly what he did. It was a really, really good performance.
Yeah, especially as that was his first win over Peter Wright on the telly, and banished those feelings of that Players' Championship final that me and you spoke about previously, because you were there live in Minehead as well. That's a big moment in the career of Ryan Searle, despite the fact he's won so many floor events, isn't it?
It is, because that's got to stay. That has to stay with you. You know, the only and the first, you know, big major TV final that you've played in. And that was a hell of a game, and Ryan played very, very well. And Peter won it in a similar fashion. You know, he just did enough. You know, Peter didn't play amazing. He did enough to get the win, and it was a Peter Wright at the time that was almost in the habit of winning and very much knew how to win. So yeah, I think it was probably a big step in both the darting career and also the sort of, you know, just personal growth of Ryan Searle as he, you know, continues to develop into a top level player, which is, I think, is where we can talk about him. You know, he's in the top 16 in the world. If he goes a bit further in this tournament, then he could start to creep further up that. And again, that has a lot of effects as we get into later in the year, because it'll start to affect things like seedings, and it'll start to, you know, we will start to see him entering tournaments in a slightly different way, which is only a good thing for him.
It is indeed. Right, let's then hear from Ryan Searle in his post-match press conference.
Well, no, I did, but we booked Friday to Friday. We're staying at Ribby Hall, where Gary recommended, and yeah, it's always a nice problem to have if you got to stay a bit of extra time. So yeah, we'll be on the phone in the morning to see if we can extend our stay. If not, we'll try and find somewhere else.
Yeah,
I think there's a sofa bed in my suite on Friday. I'm more than happy if Ryan wants to get in touch. In fact, I'd give him the bed and jump in on the sofa bed myself if he wants to come and dig in. I'll have a practice with him. It's not a problem. I can fix him up for that.
Does it come with a pillow menu?
It better have a pillow menu, or there'll be problems, mate. If I get there and there's no pillow menu, there'll be an issue.
I still never ever seen one with my own eyes. I don't think I ever will, unless Phil Barr starts stumping up some cash and sending us somewhere over them Premier Inns. Oh, I can see Phil in the back end. Updating our next interview.
I think you've got your answer on that one, mate.
With our winner. A quick reminder, by the way, that all of our interviews are available on the YouTube channel. Where you are currently watching this show, you can catch up with those as soon as you finish with us, or if you're listening back, obviously head over to Online Darts on YouTube and catch up with all the latest reaction. Right, have we missed anything in the chat room before we talk about that final one? We're talking about how far Peter Wright will fall on the order of merit. Lost £135,000 tonight off his ranking, unable to defend that. Could easily end the year outside the top 16 after the Worlds if this form continues there, because that tour card race with first round preliminary money obviously takes everyone back to where they currently are qualifying. But at the same time, you've got to account that some people below are going to cause upsets at the minute, given just how open darts is, and they're going to keep going on runs. So it's interesting to see how that one evolves for Peter Wright.
It is important to note as well that when it's, because there's a lot of it's phrased like that a lot. It is just points coming off his ranking. They don't take the money off him. He doesn't have to do that.
He's not physically paying him back £135.
He's not got his checkbook out thinking, I wish I'd played better.
Yeah, that's it. Once you win one, everything's just downhill from that. Now says lack of match practice for Snakebite when he plays tourneys games. He'll be okay. Yeah, he did have a big rest up ahead of this tournament. We'll see if he chooses to re-engage with the rest of the calendar in the next few weeks. Obviously, the World Series of Darts coming up shortly down under. James says Snakey's miles off getting to bottling jet for the players. Oh, yeah, work to be done on that when he needs to go to a few more Pro Tours and start picking some stuff up. Should start with darts, finished with he only played 5 legs with the others, couldn't break him. Yep, same darts he played with the other night is how we're going. And Nels also mentions that Jordan Henderson is off to the Saudis. Thanks for funding our new midfielder, Steven Gerrard. On to the final match of the night. It was an absolute belter, despite statistically not being the best of games. I mean, both of these have absolutely gone at 8 and 9 maximums, but 8 maximums for Luke Humphries, 9 maximums for Dirk van Dijvenbode. Both finishing mid-90s averages. Luke 95, Dirk 93. But this one will sting a lot for Dirk van Dijvenbode, Dan, who seemed to have this match in the absolute palm of his hands once again. But he suffers heartbreak on a big stage in a close encounter once more.
Yeah, I mean, the stats are bonkers, and I think some of it is because the game was so long. Luke Humphries threw 32 140s in that match. 32, which was without a doubt the most we've seen by a long way in this tournament so far. But it was also the longest game that we've seen. And the missed match start for Dirk. I was sort of WhatsApp back and forward with my pal while I was watching it, and I felt he rushed it. He went into the double 18. I think he was going for single 18. Went into the double 18. I think that unless he played for the double 18, which is bonkers. But I think he rushed the match start that he had, and a couple of times his head went, and I just felt he couldn't compose himself when he needed to. But for very large parts of that match, I thought exactly the same about Luke Humphries. I thought there was huge parts of that match where Luke Humphries couldn't compose himself when he needed to. And it just, the timing of both of them losing it and getting it back a bit, losing it and getting it back a bit, worked out all right for Luke in the end.
Do we think there was a little bit too much respect shown between the pair? Because they're normally both just a tiny little bit more animated, I'm going to suggest. In the pre-match build-up, a lot of it was Dirk was saying Luke knows how good he is. He hasn't got to worry about anyone else if he turns up and plays. Luke was saying that I know what level I'm at, but I'm pretty level with Dirk here. This could go either way. Do you think they both overthought this one a little bit heading into the game?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think that was going on stage all the way through the match. There was a lack of physicality and release of pressure. Both of those players, Dirk especially, releases a lot on stage. And I almost felt that he was trying not to in an attempt to, compose himself and keep measured. I thought that worked against him at points.
Yeah.
Because I felt
especially when he got tight towards the end, you can see he holds the dart at the back of the throw that little bit longer and tries to power it through, and it causes such a drag down of the dart.
Yeah.
Amado summed it up perfectly in the fact that both of these players are of that modern era or ilk that rely on their first dart so heavily. They've both got gorgeous entries to the board, and if that first dart is a miss, they've got they're going to be chasing, and that's a much more difficult place to be when a game gets scrappy, which is exactly how it played out.
Yeah, and some of them were bad misses. They weren't missing low on treble 20. They were missing low on the low section of the one, and they were missing low into the fives, and it wasn't when they were missing, they seemed to be properly missing, and there was some catastrophic visits from both players, but. I said it peaked and troughed, and there was elements where they dragged each other down, and it was always just going to take it to just click for one of them for 6 or 7 minutes, while the other one was off the boil, and that's what got it done in the end.
Yeah,
another one, 7 as well. Another fish reeled in tonight.
Another fish reeled in, third one in the tournament. And Mark Webster had talked us all out of the fact he was even going for it. It was the wrong time in the match to go for 170. But even then, that was a moment where you looked at it and gone, right, Dirk's just fired in the 170. He's 100% ready for this now.
Yeah.
He's in the perfect position at the back end of this. This is where it happens with Dirk. And it just didn't happen. I want to pick up on what you said about the fact they were missing low on the 5 and the 1s. If you miss in a straight line, but you're still in the 20 segment, or you miss just left or right and you're hitting the treble 5 or the treble 1, you can make a small technical adjustment or whatever in the game, and you can pinpoint where it's going wrong, or a lot of people can if you understand the mechanics of your throwing. When you're missing both by such a range, that can only be described by nerves.
Oh, and
players at this level, 100%.
Yeah, and I think what we saw as well, and I haven't got statistics for this. It's just a feeling from watching the game, but certainly, let's say, of players, in the top half of who we think are the top half stronger players in the tournament, they were both far below what you would expect. Switch hitting onto treble 19s as well. There was an awful lot of poor darts at the treble 20 that were going low into the 1, and then a big 19, or missing high into 19s. There was the switch hitting, and I know I bang on about him a lot. But what we saw yesterday from Chris Dobie was like really, really relentless. That when it wasn't quite going right, the switch hitting into 19s was absolutely superb, and that didn't work for either of those players tonight.
No, 100%. What did work, though, was the final couple of moments for Luke Humphreys, call-hand Luke, into the quarterfinal lineup of the Betfred World Matchplay, and this is what he had to say in his post-match press conference.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't expecting him to miss, but he seemed to do it a lot against me. And when I went 10-0, that's when, in my mind I'm thinking, Dirk's probably thinking now I should have put him away and I haven't. What am I doing? And that's when I thought, when the game was 10-0, I thought, I know this game's in the balance now. If I can put him under pressure, I can win. And then I started trying too hard on his throw. But then in the end, I found that break, and with the 87, I think it was, or the 88, sorry. So a couple of crucial finishes in that game that really took me over the line, but my finishing really wasn't up to scratch throughout the whole game. It helped me out in the end.
Not up to scratch throughout the whole game. He still finished at 38.9%, 14 from 36 of Luke Humphreys. Dirk van Dijvenbode actually finished that a little bit better. He was 12 from 28, just didn't create enough opportunities as the pressure started to mount towards the back end, and that sums up round 2 of the Betfred World Matchplay as we move into the quarterfinal stages over the next couple of days. The quarterfinal draw is as follows. It will be Chris Dobie against Nathan Aspinall, Joe Cullen against Daryl Gurney, Ryan Searle will take on Johnny Clayton, and Damon Heta will take on Luke Humphreys. Of the final 8, 6 of them started as seeded players. Chris Dobie and Daryl Gurney, the players that came through the Proto Order of Merit to book their spot in Blackpool. Our highest ranked player in the draw remains Luke Humphreys, swiftly followed by Johnny Clayton. That's represented in the betting odds we bought you early, but I'll read them out one more time for you guys right now. Luke Humphreys is the 11-4 favourite to go on and lift the title. Johnny Clayton 5-1. Nathan Aspinall 11-2. Joe Cullen 13-2. Damon Heta 8-1. Ryan Searle 9-1. Chris Dobie 9-1. And Daryl Gurney 12-1. If you are having a bet, please make sure you do so responsibly. Right, you know what time it is now. It's time for predictions time as we look ahead to the first night of quarterfinal action in the Winter Gardens. Just 2 games in this one, and it is best of 31 legs. First to 16, Dan. Over some distance now, how do you see this first one going?
As much as we've seen, I almost feel silly, but because we've seen really, really, really good stuff from Daryl Gurney. But I picked Joe Cullen at the very beginning of the tournament to win the quarter. And he hasn't let me down so far. And I don't think we've seen the best of him so far. I think we've seen the very best I think we've seen the best that Gurney's got to offer in this tournament. And we haven't yet seen the best of Joe Cullen. So it pulls me towards a Joe Cullen prediction. Probably by a couple of breaks, 16-12.
Yeah, I mean, personal guarantees from pundits or people predicting the outcome of the match play haven't really gone to plan so far in this tour, especially if your name is Dan Dawson. However, what I will personally assure you is that Daryl Gurney will not play the opening 5 legs the same way that he did against Gary Anderson. It's just not going to happen twice. Lightning will not strike twice back to back like that. Daryl Gurney has been exceptional in this tournament, and he's starting to look a lot like the old Daryl Gurney that was world number 3 and lifted 2 major titles in his career. However, this is starting to feel like a Minehead tournament a few years ago where I backed against Gurney in every single round where he started as the underdog, and he just kept beating people. But I still think Joe Cullen's going to win this one, so I've got to go with it. I think Cullen wins it 16-12. I just think he's got that staying power again, which, to be fair, I said about Gary. But I just think he looks so assured up there at the moment. The way that he dealt with the response from Gerwyn Price in the back end of that game yesterday was absolutely ridiculous. And I just think if Joe Cullen gets anywhere near that level again, which has been pretty consistent at 100 average in the first round, 94 average in that defeat over Gerwyn Price yesterday, I think we see Joe Cullen in a match play semi-final, potentially the scene of the biggest crime in Joe Cullen's career history after Gary Anderson absolutely robbed him a few years back on his route to the title. So I'm going 16-12 Joe Cullen. Chat room, what have you got for us? Els has got 16-10 to Cullen. Pat Everett's got Cullen 16-13. Mitchell 16-12 Daryl Gurney. Bob's got 16-8 Gurney. Zane's got Cullen 16-13. And Tommy has gone for Gurney 16-14. On to the second quarterfinal of the night to round out the top half of the draw, and it will be Chris Dobie against Nathan Aspinall, 2 players that met on multiple occasions in the Premier League. I don't have the head-to-head in front of me, but I remember it being pretty balanced, actually, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think they are they're different, very different players, but I think they are, in terms of level at the minute, they're not a million mile away from each other. Mm-hmm. In terms of what I expect them both to average, what I expect them both to do. It's a Dobie pick for me. No, I think it's head as well as heart. I think that Dobie will benefit from the longer format more so than Nathan.
Yeah.
And this is best of 31 is a considerably longer format. We referenced a couple of times that we've seen these two play each other on telly this year when we're playing. What were first to 7 in the Premier League. This is considerably different, much longer format. I think that plays into Dobie's hands. I think he will find a level and sustain it for longer. And for that reason, I will go 16-13 Dobie.
Absolute kiss of death from both of us here, but I'm backing Dobie as well for very similar reasons. I think that Nathan Aspinall is very, very good at battling to get those results. And in those shorter format matches, those races to 6, races 7, best of whatever that they play in the Premier League this year, that actually you can scrap for a breaker throw and then you can hold out just long enough with a level that alternates quite a lot.
Yeah,
I think there's a calmness to Chris Dobie that we've seen in this tournament so far that I can only liken to the maturity that we saw from Michael Smith last year, in that he went from a player that, I hate using the phrase, but there was a lot of people calling Michael Smith a bottler for the amount of major finals that he'd lost, but he still kept coming back. And don't get me wrong, there were some pressure moments in those finals that Michael Smith was not able to deliver his skill set during that time. And I think Chris Dobie has potentially been in situations similar. There was a time when he was averaging 104 on the floor and finding ways to lose games.
Yeah.
I don't see that in him at the moment. I just think he's got this calmness and this steely-eyed confidence in him right now that actually he can just respond. He backed his own 180 game, even if I think he's found a switch, if that makes sense. Like, previously, Chris Dobie was heavily reliant on his maximums. That first start has to be in the treble. He has to be able to find it. He's so much more assured at moving around the board now. Treble 19, treble 18, just keeping the score ticking over and doing what he needs to. And I think because of that, he runs out 16-10. I'm going for quite a wide margin. Yeah, because like I said, I think Aspinall has the ability to go up and down, but that's also physically in his action where he's up on his toes so much. If he loses that range for a couple of legs, I don't think Chris Dobey's going to let him off.
No, and certainly not over, and like you say, over this longer format as well. I've said that the thing, and I mentioned earlier on, the thing that really impressed me about Dobey so far in the tournament has been that moving around the ball, that switch hitting to 19s has been brilliant. And that's just kept his scores where he needs to be. The combination finishing as well, under pressure. And that is, I think, one of the biggest differences in where is I don't think it's game. We know he can throw darts. He's always been able to throw darts. It's his mentality, I think, is a lot of it. Is that under pressure, with an opponent sat waiting for 32, he is coming and taking out 125 and taking out 130 and taking out 83. And I do think that's another big key, is that combination finishing is just starting to click. And it might only take one break a throw and I don't mean the final result, but like for Dobey to get the better of Nathan. Yeah. I think if Dobey wins the bull, one break a throw in the first mini session goes into the first break 4-1 up, which is a massive mountain to climb for Nathan after that.
Yeah, I think Aspinall will approach a comeback probably with a better frame of mind than most other players would, but I still do think it is a massive mountain to climb when Dobey can just keep chipping away, holding his throw and keeping it back at arm's length, which is why I've gone for the distance of victory that I have. Into the chat room, I think we cut off a little bit early on some of the others, so I'm going to call out some Colin Gurney predictions as well. Zane's got Colin 16-13, Tommy has got Gurney 16-14, Juanita's got Gurney 16-13. Then we're going to move on to predictions for the Dobey Aspinall game. Bob's got Asp 16-13. It's 16-12 for Asp, according to Tommy. Els has Dobey 16-14. Zane has Asp 16-12. Juanita 16-11 to the Asp. Pat Everett 16-12 to the Asp. A lot of people going Asp here right now. Mitchell's got Dobey 16-10, same as me. The crowd will kill Heta with his antics. Yeah, that's for tomorrow night's show, which is for someone else to predict, because Dan and I will both not be available. In fact, this is our last Fallout Bar this week. We are both otherwise occupied for the next 3 days. And then myself, Phil Bars, Lee Boys, and potentially Dan as well, you never know, will return on Monday to review all of the tournament as a whole, including the Women's World Match Play, which gets underway on Sunday afternoon. Dan, as this is our last show, this is the final chance we can get to talk to everybody in the chat room. Just a quick reminder of who you back to be in the final, who you back to win the tournament, and if your opinion has changed since.
Do you know what it was?
I don't.
Right. I know it was definitely Chris Dobey from that half of the draw. And I'm just trying to remind myself who I think.
Did you go Van Gerwen?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm just having a look. Yeah, I went for a Chris Dobey, Michael Van Gerwen final.
Obviously, that's not possible anymore. I'm presuming you said Van Gerwen to win as well, by the way. You might be terribly loyal to the Northeast, but you didn't.
Yeah, I think I did. I'm pretty sure I went. I think I went for a Dobey Van Gerwen final with a Michael Van Gerwen victory was my prediction, I think.
Okay, given that Van Gerwen is out, one, are you sticking with Chris Dobey to be that top half finalist?
Yeah, definitely.
Two, who are you replacing him with? Replacing Van Gerwen with?
I am going to replace Van Gerwen with. It's one of two. Is
it Johnny Clayton or Luke Humphries?
No.
Oh.
No, it's not. It's Ryan Searle or Luke Humphries.
Oh.
And I'm gonna. Oh, this is bonkers. How have I managed to do this how is this my pick for a major final?
Mate, 4 days ago, I had Andrew Gilden in the semi-final. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, fair play. It's Dobie against Ryan Searle.
And who wins the final?
Chris Dobie.
Ooh, why
I
I
think-
won?
And I'm genuinely I'm far more confident of that today than I would have been weeks ago. No, I think Ryan and Johnny Clayton will be a tremendous match. I think it'll be a brilliant game with some brilliant scoring. I think Ryan might get over the line against Johnny Clayton. I think I'm very confident that Hector against Humphreys is going to be an absolute barnstormer as well. I fear that having come through this game tonight, and then what he potentially is going to have to go through against Damon Hector, that Humphreys could be spent by then. I just think he's been worked very hard tonight, and he's going to have to work very hard again against Damon Hector, and I think he could just have run out of steam.
Understandable. My predictions was for a final that was between Michael Smith and Luke Humphreys. Obviously, one of them has fallen already. So I am going to replace them with Joe Cullen from the top half. And I'm still going to say that Luke Humphreys wins the Betfred World Matchplay. And on that bombshell, that's the last time you're going to hear from me and Dan this week on the Fallout Bar. A big thank you to everybody in the chat room that has joined us throughout the week. We don't have official confirmation on who will be replacing us for tomorrow night's show, for Friday night show, and for Saturday night show. But do keep an eye on our socials. We will get that to you guys as soon as possible. Big thank you to Betfred, the title sponsors of the World Matchplay, for all of their support throughout this tournament. To everybody in the chat room for watching, and to everybody listening back as a podcast. Remember, all of our interviews from the World Matchplay are available in full online darts on our YouTube channel. Head over to socials. Make sure you're following us across all platforms. Head to our website for recommended bets, as well as articles throughout the week, including roundups, reports, previews of each session, and anything interesting you may have missed from those interviews that might give you a little pointer of where to go and catch them in full. And from myself and from Dan, a big thank you for joining us throughout the week so far. We've been Online Darts, and we'll speak to you very, very soon.
Take me home, take me on a ride. I got a good feeling about the colors lighting up your eyes. Take me home, take me